Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and on this podcast, we talk about the author's books, we talk about themselves, we talk about their ideas. We want to thank you for joining us today, and I also like to talk to authors about beginnings. I really can't wait to introduce you to my guest today. His name is Dr. Tom Williams, and he's here to talk about his autobiographical book, Shot in the Mouth and Still Preaching. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Tom Williams, Ph.D. Tom has been in the ministry for 40 years. He served as a youth director, and he's pastored both the Prairie View Baptist Church in Illinois and the Liberty Baptist Church in Canton, Ohio. He taught at Massillon Baptist College. He volunteered for the draft at 17 years of age in 1967 during the Vietnam War. After graduating from high school, he immediately entered boot camp. He served as an infantryman and who carried the radio and walked point, the most dangerous position that he could be put in. Tom sustained a gunshot wound on his mouth, which changed the course of his entire life. His remarkable story, which he shares in his book, has influenced a great many people, and Tom gives all the credit to God. Tom, I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to welcome you to Books on Air and to welcome you as my guest. First of all, I must thank you so much for your service in Vietnam. It's really an honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you for that, and it's my honor, and yeah, you're welcome. To have someone say that, it always is kind of a neat thing to hear, and so yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it was my pleasure to serve in our country.
As I started to read this book, I've told you this before we started to record, you transported me right back to the 60s. And I do always like to talk about the beginnings of things. The dedication is to a very special person in your life. Tell me a little bit about the dedication for the book.
Well, Terry Nealon is one of my best friends, and he lives in Michigan. I live in Ohio, and he knows my story. We've known each other for 20 years, and he knows my stories. We talked all the time, and he just constantly wanted me to write a book, and I did not want to write a book. I just didn't want to even think about it, and he would just constantly hound me all the time. Right? You got to write a book. You got to write this book. And you got so much to tell, and I said I just don't want to do that, and so. The last time I talked to him was on the phone, and we were just talking about again, he brought up the book, and I said, I just don't want to write that. And he said, you need to write this. You really do. It will help somebody. And so I told him I would. I said, okay, I would. I said, how do I start? He said, well, let's start with a title. And so we thought about this, and we come up with a title, and I had, Shot in the Mouth and Still Preaching. And so we come up with a title, and he said, I said, now what do I do? He said, what do we got to get? You got their attention with the photograph of you on the book, and then you have to get their attention when they open the book. And so my first chapter was one of my first mission when I was in Vietnam, and how what that did. And so I said okay, and so I said I'll do that. And then it was about a month and a half later he passed away. He got COVID and got complications, and he passed away. He was only like 59 years old, and it was a shock. I mean, I'm thinking, man. So I felt really obligated to write the book now. And in fact, I joked about it. I said, if I don't write the book now, I don't know if you can come back down from heaven and haunt somebody. But I think he would do that if I didn't write this book. I was scared he would somehow do that. And so I said, I got to write it now. So I just started it. I started handwriting it, in each chapter. And that's how it all started.
You, in the book, he has a nickname. How did he get the nickname Shrek?
Because he looks like Shrek. He's not green, but he looks like Shrek. He's a weightlifter, and he's a big guy. He's like a box. He's a great big. He's won a lot of weightlifting championships and all that. And he's a teddy bear, but he's a huge guy. and he kind of has that Shrek type of thing. He kind of roams around, and he got that. Someone gave that to him, and he loved it. He loved it, and then he would come down, and he had a mission. He had a ministry that he would come down to our church, and we would go into the schools, and he would bring football players and things like that. They'd break bats and all that, and then invite everybody back to church, and they would get a gospel message based message then, and they would still do all kinds of stuff at the church and things like that, and break bricks and all that, and so he was into that. He just looked the part. He was a huge guy. He was a huge guy.
That's amazing. As I read that, I thought, I've got to ask that question.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely looks the part. He definitely does. So,
as you were talking, something sort of flittered through my brain. I talked to a lot of different authors, and people do write books for a lot of different reasons. Some people start writing books when they're kids. They read somebody like an Alice in Wonderland book or a Little Women kind of book, and there's something about the writing that the author does that influences the person. Sometimes somebody has written something and a professor or a teacher will comment or say something very positive about the writing. But one thing that often happens is exactly what's happened to you. And two things went through my head as I was thinking about this. When there's some kind of seminal event in a person's life, either a positive seminal event or a negative seminal event, there's something about that event that will cause the person to want to write the book. I think it's really interesting that Terry really wanted you to tell your story. I know that a lot of veterans cannot do that. They cannot tell the story about the war because it affects them in such a negative way. Has this helped you with that kind of situation? Was it cathartic for you to write the book?
Well, that's an interesting question, but in a sense, no. I guess maybe it did a little bit, but I've always been very open. I don't know why, but I've always been very open about my service and about Vietnam. I don't know if it was my strange sense of humor. I don't know what got me through it, but I've never had any problems afterwards or anything like that. My dad was in World War II. He was in Pearl Harbor. He's never talked about it. And, he took it to the grave with him. And I was just the opposite. I talked about it all the time. And I think because of that, I've always been very open, and it's always helped me. Because I look, I'm a very positive person, and I look at there's some obviously tragic things that happened to me in Vietnam, but I look at that and saying, it's helped me a lot in my life, my experience in Vietnam, and it matured me and made appreciated more of where I live, and so I've always been very open about it. So it did bring some things up, but I would write a chapter. And I read the chapter to my wife and see what she thought about it. And there's some times that I actually thought I would cry through it because it brought some things up and I forgot about it or whatever. But I think that's just a natural thing. And but other than that, I've always been very open about it. And I know because of that, I've helped other people. Because of that, there's been that's had really problems with it. I've helped them just because of my attitude about it. So I think that's so yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think that if someone served in Vietnam, or if they have a relative, or if they knew someone that served in Vietnam, reading this book, I think, would be a really positive thing for that veteran. And I think that your experience and the way that you've handled it, I think, is also a model for the way that you can handle something like this. And I know that one of the counseling techniques that counselors will often recommend to people who are struggling is to journal. And let's face it, writing a book, especially a book like this, it's very personal. It happened to you, and you're sitting there and you're writing down exactly what happened. It's like journaling. Do you agree?
Yes, I totally agree. And something you said that kind of stirred my mind too is and I know it's going to be a simplistic statement here, and I know it's a very difficult statement, but it is a very true statement. no matter what has happened to you in life, whether it's Vietnam experience, whether it's you've been in a car wreck, your house is burned down, you lost a loved one, whatever tragic thing has happened to you, you still can get through that. And happiness is a choice. You have to choose to get through that. You have to choose to have peace through that. You have to choose to have joy, because if you don't, it will dominate your life if you don't do that. And that's it's such a huge thing for me, and that is really, there's a couple of reasons for writing the book, but that was one of the reasons is that the people know that, you don't have to stay where you're at. I haven't been in Vietnam for 50 years, and emotionally, I've not been in Vietnam in 50 years because I went through that. I went through it, and now I go on with my life. And I know that it's simplistic. I know some veterans that still struggle with it. I understand that, and I'm not. Except that I'm not sympathetic to it because I am, and not belittling what they're going through. But there's got to come a time when you let go. I know that sounds so easy, and the psychiatrist will say, well, years of talking and all that. I understand that, but there has to come a time, even through that, that's it. That is it, and I think it needs to be done.
I think your point is well taken. You're exactly right. And something like this, maybe they sit down and journal and write their own book about their own experience, and maybe that helps them get through it. But the thing that's tickling in the back of my mind is I want to talk about your calling. I want to talk about religion. Were you called to preach or service before Vietnam? Was that something that happened in Vietnam? Tell me a little bit about your religious aspect.
In our home, we had a great home. My mom and dad were parents that took care of us and all that, but we never ever went to church. We didn't even go to church for Christmas or Easter or anything. So I had no clue. I had no concept of the Bible, religion. I knew there was a God, and that was it. And so when I got hit in Vietnam, when I was in the hospital, obviously everybody gets religious then, and I did too. I said, "Oh God, don't let me die," and of course I'm bargaining with God. I won't do this if you let me live, and all that, and so I had no clue of anything about that. And but when I got out of the service and I married my wife, which I was engaged to then, and we've been married 54 years, and so, but we just went through our lives, and my wife was a Christian at that time, and there was a time there when she wanted to get our kids 2 and 3 years old in the church, and so they went to church. They come back, and my one girl started singing about Jesus loves me, yes I know, for the Bible tells me so, and something hit me. I don't know what it was. I've been searching for something, didn't know what it was, but just something hit me. Here's this 3-year-old blonde hair. My daughter Janice, which I named after Janis Joplin, my rock star idol, the name, same spelling and everything. She's thinking about Jesus. Jesus loves me, yes I know, for the Bible tells me so. Something hit me, and she went back upstairs, and I got on my knees, and I had no clue what I was doing. I just said, "God, what's going on here?" And so at that time, Sandy, my wife, we've been married 9 years. She's been trying to trick me to go to church. For 9 years, I would never go. I told her I want to go to church, and so she said, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And so I went to church, and for the first time, someone opened the Bible to me and explained how to get to heaven by confessing your sins to God, accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, believe He died and rose up the day. I prayed that. Still didn't have anything. Nothing hit me. I didn't cry, didn't laugh or nothing. I said, "Okay," but something hit me. I went home, and my heart, I just started thinking about this and thinking differently, and I started going to church, and we moved back up to, because we moved away, and then we moved back up to our hometown, Canton, Ohio, and I was going to church there, and all of a sudden I went down the aisle, and God spoke to my heart, not in my audible voice, but His holy heart said, "Tom, there's going to be a change in your life." And I didn't know what that was. Talked to my pastor, and he said, "Maybe God's calling you into the ministry." I'm thinking, no, because I had a great job. I said, "He's got the wrong Tom Williams. I do not want to do this." And but it took about a year, and I finally surrendered to it and started going. I'm going to Bible college, and that's the rest is history. Yeah.
Wow, amazing! I mean, that's an amazing
it is,
story. And I think
yeah,
that too is important. Don't you agree?
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, I truly believe that my praying grandmother and other praying Christian relatives and friends that I did have were praying for me because, obviously once they found out, Tom got shot in and, he's in the hospital. So I think that got me through all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have done anything. If I was sitting in the hospital room as an 18-year-old boy getting shot and knowing at this time now, okay, I've lost about 50% of my jaw, I've lost about 9 teeth, and all of a sudden here comes this chaplain and saying, "How you doing?" I said, "Hey, how do I get to heaven? What do I got to do? I'll bark at a tree. I'll
anything.
I'll do anything. I'll do anything. What do I got to do?" And I would have, because I thought I almost died here. I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy. And he didn't say much. He just kind of went on. But yeah, I mean, I that was the closest to religious as I got when I was there. But God saved me through that for that moment that I had to make that decision. Okay, now here it is, Tom. What do you want to do with me? Do you want to accept me or do you want to reject me? It's up to you now. Not knowing all that at that moment, but as I look back, that's what that was. It was a very crossroad of my life, and it was a beautiful thing because it changed me, it changed our marriage, it changed everything. It put me into some place, away from what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life with a job, and here I am. I'm in the ministry now, teaching and preaching to people and helping and doing funerals and weddings and counseling, and it was just. It was crazy. I mean, and I loved every moment of it. I still do it. I mean, I'm retired, but I still do all that. I'm still doing weddings and funerals, and I'm still teaching at our church and all that. But my life. I look back, and I realize that. I realize that, everyone has their own life and their own story. But Terry kept on telling me, but man, he used to tell me, your story's nuts. I mean, it's just you've got to get that out. And I. As I was writing it, I've seen that. I did see that. I've seen the purpose of the book as I was writing it first. I'm thinking, wow. And sometimes I'm serious. Sometimes I'm going, this is me. I'm writing about me. I went through this. What? And I would actually do that. I would actually say that. And I'm thinking, man, this is a crazy life. I mean, so yeah.
Authors, I've heard authors who've written about things that have happened to them like that. And that's something that often happens, is that you're sitting there and all of a sudden, you're writing things. There's something that changes for us as human beings when we sit down, and I love it that you said you were writing it by hand, because there's something about us that as human beings, if you write something by hand, it's I don't know if it's the connection between the brain, the hand, the pen, and the actual writing.
Yeah.
I mean, something happens.
Yeah.
And so often they will have some kind of realization or, something new all of a sudden will come to them about what happened to them that they hadn't thought about before, simply because they're looking at it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. It's been so in my life, obviously all my life, but when someone would come up to me saying, "Man, I heard you were shot in the mouth," and I would say, "Yeah," I would casually say, "Yeah," but in their eyes, maybe hearing it for the first time, they're going, "What?" And I'm going, "Well, yeah." It's almost like it's a casual thing, but because I've just lived it, but in there, and so that's why that was, I gotta get this book out to somebody that it might not be a Vietnam experience, it might be something else they're going through in their life. This is going to be as a help to them,
Right.
So,
could be a cataclysm, a wreck, or a cataclysmic disease, or anything. Something that's a life-changing experience for them.
Exactly. Yeah, there are many things out there like that. Yeah.
Now we've got to talk about the incident. I mean, when I first started reading the book, and you start talking about, you're 17 years old, they put you on a transport ship, you go to Vietnam, you're not expecting. All of a sudden, you get out, and they say, you are going to carry the radio and you're going to be the point guy. You were, I mean, when I read that, I thought that must have been a terrifying experience. What happened? How did the incident, the shot in the mouth, happen? You've got to tell us. Maybe not too much. We want them to buy the book, so don't give them too much.
Well, here's the thing. It's amazing when you're in the moment, and because I was trained as a tank driver at Fort Knox, Kentucky, so I'm going to Vietnam looking for my tank. Give me the keys to my tank and I'll drive it around. But this company that was wiped out, they needed replacements, so they lined us up, and there was cooks and clerks and tank drivers, and said, your MOS has now changed your infantry. And I said, oh, wow, okay. And so, and all of a sudden, and they looked, and this guy the sergeant was looking up and down the line and all that. And there was like maybe 20 or 30 of us. And he, for some reason, he looked at me, which I weighed 130 pounds. I got to be the smallest guy. Might be a few guys smaller, but he says, and you, Williams, you're going to carry the radio. And I had no clue what that meant. I didn't know if it was a transistor radio. I didn't know if it was, I didn't have no idea. And then all of a sudden, when I found out what it was, a 45-pound radio strapped on my back, and I'm going to be walking around with that. I'm thinking, what? And then all of a sudden, then once we get out in the field, so we needed somebody to walk point. So, Williams, you got the radio. You and so-and-so, you're going to walk point, which means guinea pigs. You're going to walk out 100 yards and so in front of everybody else. Shake up the ambush and all that. And so, which is one of the most dangerous jobs there is, because you got that antenna waving and saying, hit me first. You cut the communications off. And so it was in February, and we were chasing these guys during Tet Offensive, and we was chasing these guys, and we lost them, and we didn't realize we was into a horseshoe trap, and we just rested, and I always rest my radio against a tree on my backside to get it off my shoulders, and I just heard the zing zing, like some fire bullets going past me, and instead of just hitting the ground, I turned around from this tree and looked, which is a human instinct, which is not really a good thing to do, obviously. And I said, I'm looking at, and one of the rounds hit the ground first and come at an angle, and it went through my cheek, on my jaw, and lodged into my cheekbone. And it spun, as it was spinning me around. They kept shooting at me and hit my radio, but it didn't penetrate because it's so thick. But it kept spinning me around. Instead of on my backside, I rested against the tree. I'm now laying stomach, looking at the tree, and I'm thinking, not knowing what just happened. Never did pass out or anything, but I didn't have no pain because I did go in a little bit of shock. So then, after just staring at the tree and hearing everybody yell for medic, I figured someone's hit, not knowing it was me, and I kind of wiped my chin, and I looked, and I said, "Oh no!" I seen the blood, and I said, "I knew it was me." And so I started yelling, which when I did that, and I'm always careful when I'm telling the story. No one's eating or something like that, but because out of my mouth came bone and teeth, and then actually spit the bullet out, and I had the bullet in my hand, and so my medic comes racing over to me, and he's wrapping my head up, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm a mess, and didn't know what was going on. And before the swelling took place, I was able to say one statement, and I looked at him, and I said, will I ever be able to kiss Sandy, which is my wife today? We was engaged. I said, will I be able to kiss Sandy again? He laughed at me, said, yeah. And I'm thinking, well, you're lying to me. I know you're lying to me because I got to be a mess here. And so it was probably a week or so before I actually seen how I looked, which wasn't really that bad, because all the damage was done inside. So that's how that happened, and it was just, they said you had my medic said you got a $1 million wound because you're going to be able to get home and all that, which I never did. I went actually in the hospital a while, then I actually went back to my outfit again. But so it's an amazing thing when I think about it, what happened and how close it that. The surgeon said a 16th of an inch anyway, that bullet would have went, it would have killed you. And so, I mean, to be able to have it lodged in my cheekbone like that instead of going straight up in my brain or whatever, I mean, so it was incredible.
Now, this is the seminal incident in the book, but that's not all the book is about. The book is about recovery. The book is about your positive attitude. The book is about how you came through the incident and how it changed your life, but not in maybe the negative ways that listeners might be thinking, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it did not. I mean, in fact, In fact, here I am laying in the hospital, and thinking that my parents knew that I was hit, because I figured Red Cross told them and all that. So I'm in the hospital, and I'm writing a story about what happened to me. And we have these red ants there, and I call them vampire ants, because they walk up your arm and they bite you in the neck. I mean, the itty bitty little things. And so I wrote a story that these ants attacked me. One had a rifle, and it's actually in the book, and in my letter, actually, the letters in the book, and that I wrote to my mom. And I said, they shot me in the mouth, and now here I'm laying in the hospital because of these. So I'm joking about this whole thing, thinking they knew. Well, the Red Cross got things messed up. They didn't know I was hit, and they got that letter. And they had no clue. And my dad said, my mom said, he's just joking. And my dad looked at the head, and I said, no, that says Long Bend Hospital. I think this is real. I think he's messing with us and trying to make us feel good. I think he actually did it. So they contacted the Red Cross, and they said, yes, he did. And so that's the first time they found out about it, when they got my letter, as I was joking about it. And so that's how I kind of took things. I take things that way, and anybody can go negative, anybody can go positive. It's been my life anyway. I chose to. It's not going to dictate to who I am. I mean, I'm not going to be a negative person and bitter or angry about this. And so I wasn't. I didn't. I never did get that way. I mean, I just went on with my life, and yeah, it was obviously surgeries and all that, but it just. That's what I chose to do. It was I chose to make it positive. I really did.
That's one of the things I really love about the book, Tom, is that if people look at the title, they may go, "Oh no," they don't. They need to understand that this is not that kind of book. It's an uplifting, positive book. It's a real life, true to life story. It really happened, and this is how someone who went through something that sounds so horrendous and came out on the other side and made choices. I think that's so important that you've emphasized. You make a choice about how you handle these life experiences.
Yes.
Tom, thanks for sharing this story. I mean, I just can't imagine that anyone who's listening to us is not really saying, okay, where can I find the book? So let's tell them where they can find it. The name of the book, I'll give you the name of the book. It's Shot in the Mouth and Still Preaching by Tom, Tom, Williams, Williams. You can go to Amazon, put that in the search feature, click on it, and the book will come right up, and you'll see a picture of Tom, his young self there as he was in Vietnam. Yeah, there he is. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's always it says, click here. If you do that, the book will open, and you can read an excerpt. The dedication is there to Shrek, Terry, who really inspired writing the book. And then you get to read part of the first chapter. And there are some other photographs in there as well. Tom, can they find the book other places besides just on Amazon?
Yeah, it's actually on Barnes & Noble. It's on their website. You can get it from there. And also the publisher, which is Author House Publishing. If you just go to that, it'll get right into their homepage, and then it's pretty self-explanatory how you can get it from there.
Now, you've also got a website, and our listeners would probably be interested in your website. Let's tell them where they can find it.
Okay, website is and my name, Tom Williams, and 1111.com. So it's www.tomwilliams1111.com, and it'll go. You go in there, and it'll tell you there's a homepage, and explains a little bit about me and about the book and how to buy the book, and things like that. It's kind of a neat website.
Now, I think you're going to do something on Facebook, but you really haven't started doing that yet, have you?
No, I haven't. I'm going to. I do want to get something on Facebook and get it going and constructed. What that is the term they use, and I am going to do that. But it's not there yet. But I am definitely going to do that.
So probably what you'll do when you get that Facebook author page put together is give some kind of reference on your website, so they'll be able to find you on Facebook. Make sense?
Correct. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I always think that it's really important for an author to have the last word about their work. And let's face it, your work is so powerful and so personal. You've got to have the last word about this story. When you were writing this story, were you thinking about who might read the story?
Yes, I really was. And there's two different types of people I was thinking about. First of all, I was thinking about like someone that's going through something. I mean, a Vietnam veteran or anything, Desert Storm, Iraq, whatever, a soldier that has been through stuff and they've seen things and that really no human should see, and which I have seen, and hopefully. Not bragging on myself, because just hopefully they will be able to read the book and start kind of making, especially if it's controlling their lives, if they can start making some choices and saying, you know what, wait a minute, nobody controls my life but me, and I hope they can see that and they can start making some positive choices and choose that happiness and that joy, which is it's in all of us, and that's what I'm shooting for them. And then plus the fact there's another aspect of this and that is there's someone out there that just their own life, their own destiny. I don't want to get too involved with it, but their internal destiny. Where are they going to go? And having that peace and joy, knowing that, because we all die, young or old, doesn't matter. But what happens after that? And so I put that transformation of me, not a Christian, into as I become a Christian. I wanted them to see that and hear that, and once they see that, and I know that that sometimes frightens people, but it's reality. It is just true reality. To have that peace and knowing that I can go to heaven. And so that I wanted them to hear that. I wanted them to see that transformation and how that took effect in my life. I mean, I'm nobody special. I'm not some kind of self-righteous Christian. I still struggle with things in my life, but I do know, because of my acceptance of Christ, that I'm going to heaven. I want people to see that in that, and that was a major thing, transformation in my life. And I took that from that, and then using the Vietnam experience and all that, and it's just been a blessing to see how God has used all that in my life to help other people, and that's. There's nothing better than that. There's nothing better to be able to help somebody. I mean, really help somebody, and you see that. That's priceless. The reward for that is just priceless, and that's a blessing to me.
Tom, I'm going to disagree with you. You are someone who is very special, and I think that you have shared with the world a story that is extremely important. I think that your bottom line messages are all so positive, and I think that you are inspirational and a role model for anyone who is going through anything in their life that feels defeating. If they read your book, see what happened to you, see what you did to get through this, see how that positive outlook and becoming a Christian, how important that became in your life, I don't see how it couldn't help them figure out the same way to go through this storm that they're going through. It's just been such an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You're fascinating, you're inspirational. I mean, I could use all kinds of adjectives, and I'm not trying to flatter you. I just am so pleased that you and I got to talk and that we got to share your book with our listeners. So thank you so very much for being my guest today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Now remember, you can find Tom's book, Shot in the Mouth and Still Preaching by Tom Williams, on Amazon and on the Author House website. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join me for our next Books on Air, because you never know who's going to be here. and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so very much for listening.